They're confined to a cage. They don't go on a walk. They don't sleep in a dog bed. No one's petting them. No one's throwing the ball for them. They're not getting any treats. You know, you can see pictures of dogs living in puppy mills and they stare at the corner. They turn away and they look at the corner of the cage.
Hey, Drew here. Before we get started, I want to tell you about the sponsor for today's show, Jope's Hip and Joint Dog Chews. Their unique formula combines therapeutic dose of UC2 collagen and a high dose of omega-3 and curcumin from turmeric. Jope uses the most science-backed ingredients for mobility and long-term joint health, including UC2 collagen, which has been shown to outperform glucosamine in several studies. Founded by veterinarians, Jope offers a product you can trust, made by experts passionate about dog health, here in the USA. I subscribe to Jope's Hip and Joint Dog Chews for my own dog. Ozzy loves the taste, and I feel great knowing I'm giving him the support he needs to thrive. By subscribing, I never need to worry about forgetting to give him the care he needs. It's never been easier to give your dog the best supplementation for healthy joints. This combination of high-quality ingredients, expert formulation, and manufacturing integrity ensures that Jope supplements help put the spring back in your pup's step. Go to petjope.com, petjope.com, and enter promo code LOVEDOG, all one word, at checkout. You'll get 15% off your first order. Now, let's get on with the show.
We have selected dogs for breeding for hundreds of years, for centuries, for their desire to be with and work for humans. So once you've gotten that inbred in them, they want badly to be with humans. And we deny them that very thing they so urgently need. That is a terrible act of cruelty. They want that companionship, but they haven't had it, and so they're afraid, and they have behavioral problems.
Hey there, Drew.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing real good. I'm excited for the show.
Yeah, me too. Welcome, everyone. I love the title we gave this show, How Much Is That Doggie in the Window? Seems rather apropos, since we're talking about puppy mills here.
Double entendre.
I guess so. Anyway, hi, I'm Mark Drucker. So I'm your host along with Drew. And a little bit about me, I'm the founder and the business guy behind Love Dog. I love dogs, and I have for my entire life. And I saw the need a couple of years ago for something more credible, a more reliable resource, a trusted resource for information. There seemed to be a lack of it in spite of all that's out there. So we founded Love Dog. And the reason that I talk like that about myself is because I want people to know that I'm not a dog professional. I'm not a trainer. I'm a business guy. And so when I chime in and I ask questions and make comments, I'm coming from the place of the dog lover, the pet parent. Unlike Drew, a dog professional, a behavior consultant, and he's coming with an incredible amount of knowledge about how dogs are in the world. And he'll tell you a bit about that. So this is an important interview that we're doing with the Colorado Citizens for Canine Welfare. I'm glad we're doing it because we want to advocate for dogs' well-being here. That's a big reason for us even existing. And this show works right into that whole idea. Puppy mills are just bad. They're bad because they're bad for the dogs, period. What we're going to learn about in this show is how to avoid them. Also, when they're okay, meaning not that they are okay, but when it's okay to get a dog from a puppy mill, which is to say, if you're going to go and adopt from a shelter. So there is a difference, and we'll get into that in the show. Let me just tell the listeners a bit about 3CW. Colorado Citizens for Canine Welfare is a 501c3 nonprofit organization working to end puppy mills. Their mission is to educate the public, media, and policymakers that buying puppies from pet stores, the internet, and Craigslist supports the cruel puppy mill industry. Their goal is to see every dog in his or her rightful place in this world, in our home and in our hearts. 3CW operates with an all-volunteer staff and 100% of donations are used to support public education and public policy efforts. So, Drew, talk a little bit about yourself, and let's get into the show.
Yeah, so if you're new to the show, I'm Drew Webster. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant and professional trainer. And to me, this is a really important show. And while some of the topics are difficult to hear about and to learn about, I think they're vitally important. And if you really, really love dogs the way we do, it's important that we face these things because this is a cultural problem and this for-profit breeding continues. And you may be completely unaware that that dog you bought at the mall or the pet store is actually supporting this industry. And so we talk a little bit about educating ourselves, educating our community, what kinds of things we can do on a local policy level or just in an outreach. Maybe you can use your social media. Maybe you can talk to your neighbors. There's so many valuable takeaways at the end of this episode. So listen all the way through. If you care about dogs, this is a show that you've got to listen to. And it's a hard truth we need to face as a country and as a community. And so with that, I think we should get to the show.
Let's get to the show.
Let's go.
So, hello, Pam. Hello, Cheryl. And hello, Drew.
Hello, it's nice to be here with everybody. I can't wait for our listeners to understand the topic that we're getting into today because I think it's one that affects everybody, but people know very little about.
So we are here today with the two founders of Colorado Citizens for Canine Welfare, better known as 3CW, Pam Dickerson, the president, and Cheryl Saipe, the treasurer. And the work that they do is incredible, and it's a big job to try to educate the public about puppy mills and why to end them, why to abolish them, why they're no good, I guess. So, the way I want to start out this interview, this show today, is to ask both of you, and I'd like you both just to speak on it because it's obviously very personal. What is the driving force personally behind the work that you do? I mean, you've got to have a great passion, a great love to keep getting up every day and every morning for the last 12 years thinking about this, running this organization, and going out there and trying to make this happen. Like, what got you into it, and why is it so important to you?
Well, I guess I could go first. I first learned about puppy mills from an Oprah Winfrey show. She had an undercover investigator go into a puppy mill, and I could not believe the condition that these breeding dogs, the mother and father dogs, were living in 24/7. And having a dog of my own and looking into his eyes and knowing that we had this connection and thinking that he could have come from that situation or that dogs like him are living in that situation, I was like, I have to do something about this. That just broke my heart. And I said, this does not have to occur.
And you were a pediatrician, right, Cheryl? For your
I'm a
career?
retired pediatrician. Yeah, I was practicing pediatrics at that time, and this just stole my heart.
So it feels to me like service is in your DNA. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
Giving, caring.
I just want to make a difference. I see something that bothers me that isn't right, and I want to do something about it. And so puppy mills is one of the horrible things in this world that we can actually do something about.
Yeah.
We can't. There's so many other things that I have no control over, but this doesn't have to happen. Puppy mills do not have to happen.
Pam, what can you add?
Well, I got into this because, like Cheryl, I love dogs. I love animals. I have compassion for them, and when I see the pain that they are raised in or kept in, the mother and father breeder dogs, the puppies that come out of these horrible situations, it breaks my heart. It keeps me awake. And I feel the pain for the people who buy puppy mill pups and don't know any better. They think they're well-bred from a good breeder, like the store tells them, and then they find out that they're not. They develop some diseases, some have problems right off, and have terrible experiences, and maybe lose their newly bought puppy from parvo or distemper or some other issue that needn't have happened. And the consumer is in great pain having bonded with and come to love their new puppy, and they're shattered. That breaks my heart. This doesn't have to be when we have wonderful breeders out there who do a good job of breeding for health and selling puppies that are healthy, and bred for longevity, which we all hope for, long lives and good health for our puppies.
And we're going to talk specifically about breeding for health in just a bit, and we're going to put a whole fact sheet or crib sheet into the show notes about breeding for health. But I guess the first thing I want to just let people know out there is how they can get a hold of you or how they can learn more about what you're doing. Now, granted, it is just here in the state of Colorado, but these practices carry out into all different kinds of states in all different kinds of ways. But we're specifically talking Colorado today. What's your website? Are there any Facebook pages, Instagram? What do you want them to know?
You can go to our website, caninewelfare.org. We explain what a puppy mill is, and we explain how to find dogs from a humane source. We have a whole tab called Find Dogs, and we list the licensed shelters and rescues in Colorado. That means that not only they paid a licensing fee, but they are inspected and they meet minimum standards. Whereas a lot of breeders, backyard breeders, or if you buy a dog at a parking lot or something, they're not going to meet any kind of standards for the breeding dogs and for the puppies. So anyway, you can go to our website, caninewelfare.org, or to our Facebook page. Just search, I think, Canine Welfare, we should come up, or Colorado Citizens for Canine Welfare. And if you like us on Facebook, you'll see a lot of posts about puppy mills and what's going on, not only in Colorado, but all over the country, because we post things that are going on all over the country.
Well, it's a great educational resource, and it's got all sorts of information on there that our listeners can dive into. And if you're not in the state of Colorado, it should really encourage you to find your local activist groups that, might be able to help direct you. But what we're going to dive into on the show today and really get to understand is what exactly is a puppy mill and how can people avoid falling into the trap of supporting this really cruel and difficult to identify industry.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. What you mentioned it before, Cheryl, as it being on your website. What is a puppy mill?
So a puppy mill, if you ever wondered where does the puppy in the pet store come from, or the puppy that's sold online, where does it come from? They come from mass commercial breeding facilities, which are also called puppy mills. And the mother and father dogs are kept solely for breeding. The mother is bred every cycle. The dogs live in very unhealthy circumstances, usually in cages, often with wire bottom floors, so it's very painful on their feet. They can live outside all summer, outside all winter. They have poor quality food, poor quality water. They get very little veterinary care, very little socialization or none with people. And it's because they are bred for profit. They are not bred for health or for the love of the breed. They're just bred for profit. So they produce puppy after puppy. Millions of puppies are produced every year in puppy mills.
So this is the business that the puppy mill owners have decided to go into to make their income.
Yes. It started right after the Depression as a way to make money. And it's grown into a huge industry. There's estimated to be, I think, 3,000 licensed puppy mills in the United States. And there's probably at least 10,000 that are unlicensed that no one even knows about. No one's regulating, no one's licensing. So are all puppy mills the same, I guess is the question I want to ask. Are they all bad, or are some, in fact, a little bit better than others in terms of the general conditions? I take that with the caveat that if it's a puppy mill, we want it gone. But knowing that dogs are coming into this arena, into this environment with these conditions, are there some that may be better than others? Well, the United States Humane Society, HSUS, they create a list every year of the horrible 100, they call it, the ones that they think are the absolute worst. But if you ask me and Pam, anybody who breeds a dog over and over and it's not a warm, loving home, they're living in a cage somewhere, it's It's all bad for the dog that's living in the cage. And the puppies that are produced under those circumstances are not healthy either.
You know, what we have seen in recent years is you ask, are there better ones than others? Some of them have larger enclosures, indoor. Some of them are air conditioned and heated. But when you're in the business of making a living from breeding dogs, you need to breed them as often as possible with as little human interaction as possible because that costs money. So the actual facilities, most, I don't know what the percentage is. I see so many exposés, but they are so horrible. They make your skin crawl, make you want to cry. But I do see a few pictures of facilities that if I didn't know better, I'd go, oh, that looks like a nice, clean building. But that doesn't give the puppy the socialization that it needs, and the mothers and fathers are used solely for breeding. So to me, that is a bad business model for the poor dogs.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about some of the minimum quote-unquote welfare standards that were set by the USDA, we're talking about, you know, legislation that was passed in the 1960s that's usually based off of livestock minimal requirements for quote-unquote welfare. And a lot of that is, you know, as we've discussed in some of our past conversations, the dogs just being able to stand up, lie down, and turn around in these enclosures. And when you're talking about not only just being kept inside, those minimum requirements of having like food, shelter, water, things like that doesn't give them the ability to perform species typical behaviors. It doesn't give them any quality or purpose of life. They're literally just in there to be bred to make profit puppies. And when you think of this multi-billion-dollar industry that's profiting off of dogs, there's very little money and attention being put into the welfare conditions around breeding, you know. And we talk about, and we're going to get into a little bit, what makes an ethical breeder and how we can kind of list and find those. But this is the importance of supporting shelters and fosters and local municipalities that are working to end puppy mills and really educating the next generation of people who want to live with dogs to never, ever, ever buy a dog from a pet store for this very reason.
I have a question that comes up for me right now, especially in the context of an interview we recently did on separation anxiety. One of the things that I read about puppy mills is that the pups are separated from their parents after 5, 6, 7 weeks in most cases. Let's say 6 might be an average, when I think the standard, a better time frame would be 8 weeks, at least in most people's minds. Is this true? And Drew, I'm just wondering, from a behavioral standpoint, could this possibly contribute toward a separation anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're going to get into today is kind of that short and long-term fallouts of puppy mills. And Pam and Cheryl were talking about some of the exposures to disease and missed opportunities for socialization. And what you're getting into, Mark, with the timeline is basically a stage of development for dogs when they're imprinting on what their life is going to look like. And so when puppies are born into a litter, that's when they're getting feedback from their sibling dogs, when they're interacting with the mother dog. They're getting gut health and nutrients and things like that from feeding with the mother. And you take them away from those early opportunities, they're missing out on all that. It's going to have profound long-term effects on those puppies, both in their well-being, their sense of security and attachment, as well as, you know, their bite inhibition and some of their species typical behaviors that they're going to learn from those healthy and happy interactions that they would be having in a whelping box in a backyard and in a ethical breeding environment.
So we often talk about setting dogs up for success, and this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing.
It's devastating.
Wow.
Some people will equate the first 6 to 8 weeks of life of a puppy to the first 6 months or even first 5 years of life of a child. You can imagine if you raised a child in a confined without interaction with other human beings, how that child would turn out. And that's what happens to these puppies. They need to be interacting with people and their siblings and their mother, but they need early exposure to people, to children, and then they could be well socialized animals their whole life. But if they miss that, that's very hard for them to make up.
Well, you said it, Cheryl, and we had Dr. Kathy Murphy talking about the neurology of dogs at different stages of development, and that's really what we're looking at is it's not necessarily that something is terrible happening at that phase of life. Often the puppies are the beneficiaries. They get out of that situation quick. But it's the lack of things that are happening that's really setting them up for long-term problems down the road. And they really need those healthy, happy environments if they're going to acclimate into our human environment successfully or just be stable adult dogs out there in the world. So many people see that cute little Maltese waving at them in the pet store and think, oh, how cute, she looks healthy, but they can't see what's going on behaviorally or what didn't happen in those early stages of development. So that's a really good point, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like if you're in a pet store looking at a pup, it's virtually a guarantee that that puppy is from a puppy mill. Whereas we don't know that necessarily, and probably likely, it's probably likely that we don't know that if you're in a shelter somewhere. I guess my question is, how can someone know if the puppy that they're looking at is from a puppy mill?
If they get it from a shelter or a rescue, they can't know that, and they accept that. And they have a heart for rescuing an animal, which I applaud. But if you're paying $1,000 to $3,000 for a puppy, you should know that that puppy was bred for health that will minimize the trauma to that puppy, give him good socialization, minimize the vet care cost to you, and the how shall I say, painful cost to the puppy or dog as it grows older of not having diseases unnecessarily, and giving you and the puppy the longest time you can have together. So it's two different worlds. Rescuing is wonderful. I hope people will empty the shelters and the fosters. But if you're looking to buy a puppy, the only way you can know that it is not from a puppy mill is to check out the breeder, the mother and parent dogs, get the AKC registration numbers, and check on the National Canine Health Information Center database and make sure that that puppy has been tested for all the recommended health tests for that breed and the results listed on that database. That's your first check that it was bred for health and it's a responsible breeder. There are other things that come into play, but that's your starting point.
Well, and another starting point is the breeder needs to allow you to meet the mother dog. You should be able to meet the mother dog and see her living in a warm, loving home. If the breeder says, oh no, I'll meet you at the Kansas border with your puppy, you can't see my home, then that is a red flag. If you can see the mother living in a warm, loving home and you believe them that that is the mother and the poor mother isn't living in a cage in the backyard somewhere, but that's an easy way. If you can meet the mother. The other thing is that the way pet stores in Colorado are required to have a card on the cage of the puppy that you're looking at. That card needs to list the origin, the commercial breeding facility that dog came from. And you can look that up, but they will have, I will caution you, they'll have like a fake website and it'll make it look like it's not a puppy mill. So you have to delve a little deeper into, you can find violations. Pam, you can maybe explain how to find all that.
Well, we have pulled information. Yes, you can find it actually pretty easily. You can go into the USDA database, which is available to every consumer in the United States. It's a fairly easy lookup to find that source, the facility that bred that puppy, and see what it's like. If they have 1,000 dogs, you kind of know it's a puppy mill. If they have violations, welfare violations, didn't get vet care, didn't provide adequate food or water, you know it's a puppy mill. So that's a way to find out some good information. And we have pulled statistics for many years now on the stores in Colorado and the dogs they import for resale. And what we found is that 93%, that's a huge number, 93% of the puppies that come in from out of state and are sold through the pet stores come from puppy mills or puppy mill puppy brokers. The brokers buy them indiscriminately from puppy mills. 93%. So that tells you if you're going into a pet store, you are almost certainly getting a puppy from a mill.
Well, that's incredible, and it gives our listeners some tools, especially if they're here in Colorado. And where you're kind of hinting at there, Cheryl, is now we have all this technology and can kind of work for and against us, where you can look up that breeder online, and now what we're seeing is things like websites that are really easy to make. Everybody can make websites now that might make you think through the powers of marketing that you're getting a dog from a farm outside in the tall grass and all this. And so you really have to know how to read in the line, but you might even be able to ask them to FaceTime and see the mother dogs living. And that's not going to be a guarantee, but these websites and these tools you're giving us are great. I know, wasn't there 7 states that have banned the sale of puppies from pet stores? Do you happen to know what other states those were?
Yeah, I have a list. Well, Colorado has not banned the sale of puppies in pet stores, but we have like 15 cities that have banned the sale of puppies in pet stores. Littleton just passed the ban. Aurora passed it a few months ago. Vail, I think Superior, but I don't have a list of those. But the states that have passed the ban: Oregon, Illinois, New York, California, Maryland, Maine, and Washington.
That's tremendous.
So, yeah, and we will be working on a ban in Colorado, but right now we're working on some cities in Colorado. The other thing we didn't mention is if you buy a dog off of the internet, it's a scarier proposition than buying a dog in a pet store, because in the pet store you can actually see the puppy. They should have that card. If they don't have the card, don't buy the puppy. But on the internet, you have no idea what you're getting. And it's the same thing, because they can have a fancy, beautiful website and it's hiding a horrible, ugly puppy mill. And again, you ask the question, I need to meet the mother dog or I'm not buying that puppy.
You need to be allowed on the premises. You need to see the whole environment that the dog's been raised in. Yeah.
Well, puppy mill owner is not going to let you onto their facility because they're filthy, they smell, they're loud. Just so many bad things about it.
Well, there is another side to this, which is wonderful breeders. Most of them, you can go to their house and you can see the dog. You can meet the mother.
Right.
But even with some wonderful breeders, there are so many animal activists who can be scary that some breeders are going, hey, I'm a single woman. I don't want to invite people to my house. I just do 1 litter every 2 years of my champion dogs. I breed wonderful dogs. I do all the health tests, but I don't want someone to come to my house. But, it's not the end all to say, I have to go to their house, but you should be able to meet the mother and check her temperament.
Well, and Pam, to that, there's a few organizations, and maybe you know better than me, that are trying to create certifications and kind of conglomerates for those breeders who are breeding for ethical breeding, for behaviorally sound dogs, for healthy dogs. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those organizations?
Yes, I know what you're talking about, Drew. I'm going to say they're better than puppy mills, but once again, they are selling off websites generally, and you really can't check the conditions of the home or feel good about it. They don't show their dogs. They are breeding for money. Yeah. So the conditions at those homes are supposed to be checked by the organizations, and they're supposed to be checked, it's about, I think, every 18 months. But in the meantime, it's the same mindset as a puppy mill operator. I am breeding these puppies for money.
So I suppose it's a step in the right direction, right? Like it's not a fix, but if you're saying, a breeder would have to opt into that program. They have to choose to have some level of transparency and some level of agreement to inspection versus, say, if a USDA inspector just came by. I know they don't have to answer the door. They don't have to allow those inspection. And when we see these violations, a lot of times no action happens after that. So I think it's probably a step in the right direction. I know one of those is through the efforts of Dr. Candace Crone at Purdue University. That's the Canine Care Certified Standards, I believe.
Yes, Canine Care Center.
And
Yes.
like you said, there's minimal standards, but it is an opt-in. And I know Jessica Heckman and Trish McMillan and others are trying to support breeders by creating the Functional Dog Collaborative, which is basically just an educational co-op of trying to get breeders that want to hold themselves to higher standards. So I think it is a movement towards the right direction. And the more tools people out there that are looking to add a dog to their home have, I think it is very beneficial.
Yes, we'd agree.
And with that, I think we head off to a break and we'll be right back.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our episode so far, and I want to thank the fine folks who've been helping bring it to you. Jope's Hip and Joint Dog Chews. After trying them on Ozzy, my own dog, I really wanted to have Dr. Christine and Dr. Jeremy, the founders of Jope, support our podcast. Their passion ensures that every product Jope offers is not only safe, but third-party tested to guarantee the quality of the active ingredients, providing pet parents like me with trusted solutions for their beloved companions. To try this incredible product, simply go to petjope.com, petjope.com, enter promo code LOVEDOG at checkout to get a discount off your first order. Why did I subscribe? Because you get the best prices. I don't have to worry about exactly when to reorder, and the ingredients have proven their benefits over the long term. Try them today. Now back to our show. Right, welcome back to Love Dogs. Let's get back to our conversation with Pam Dickerson and Cheryl Saipe, all about puppy mills and how to be better educated and informed when we go to add those cute little balls of fluff to our home. We were talking before the break a little bit about the conditions, and Mark, you were kind of listing out what those requirements might be on the parent dogs. Cheryl and Pam, tell us a little bit. I'm always thinking about long-term trauma. You know, there's the risk of bacterial and other infections and disease, but you know, when we're talking about trauma, a lot of the puppies might escape some of this. But what about the parent dogs? Like, what are they experiencing on a regular basis, even if they're in a secure environment that's temperature regulated? Like, what is a daily life like for those parent dogs?
Well, they're confined to a cage. They don't go on a walk. They don't sleep in a dog bed. They don't sleep in the owner's bed, if that's allowed. No one's petting them. No one's throwing the ball for them. They're not getting any treats. You know, you can see pictures of dogs living in puppy mills and they stare at the corner. They turn away and they look at the corner of the cage because they're afraid of the humans. The humans, I guess, treat them horribly. They don't even want to see the humans. Also, you'll see 4 or 5 dogs crammed into one cage. They'll be filthy. They get no grooming. So you can imagine these dogs who have more like hair than fur. It can get really, really long. They have a hard time defecating and peeing because they have so much hair on them. And it's so heavy for these little dogs to carry all this hair around. So it's really a miserable, lonely, sad existence for man's best friend and woman's best friend. It's just...
I want to add here.
Yeah.
The thing that drives me when I look at these poor creatures, yes, they look horrible. You can see visibly that their lives are full of severe neglect. But I want to point out, we have selected dogs for breeding for hundreds of years, for centuries, for their desire to be with and work for humans. So once you've gotten that inbred in them, they want badly to be with humans. And we deny them that very thing they so urgently need. That is a terrible act of cruelty. That's part of why puppy mills send out puppies that are emotionally defective sometimes. That's why when puppy mills release dogs for adoption when they're through breeding at 8 or 10 or 12 years old, they have trouble assimilating into society. They want that companionship, but they haven't had it, and so they're afraid, and they have behavioral problems.
Yeah.
So, Drew, does it ever become too late then? Like if the mother or the father is adopted out, and they're
No,
5, 6, 7 years old, is it too late?
Mark, I always hold hope. When I meet these dogs, and I've worked with dogs that are clearly from puppy mill and hoarding situations. I've worked with dogs that have come through, unfortunately, the meat markets of various countries and things like that, where they were, in deplorable conditions and mistreated and traumatized. And what I think is so incredible about dogs is their adaptability and their resilience. You are often working a very slow pace, working with those dogs. And often you have to find something that they can create a secure base. So for a lot of these dogs, it might be another dog, like a really confident, outgoing dog that they partner with. It could be another species. It could be a single person. You see all these harrowing tales now of these dogs, but it can be a slow uphill battle. And one of the biggest things is giving them autonomy. They've never had autonomy in their life. What Cheryl's talking about with these dogs staring at the wall, we might think of in the behavioral world as learned helplessness, where they don't even try any behaviors. They just stand there because they have no way of escaping the daily horrors that are upon them. So while it is heartbreaking to see them in their current state, I am very hopeful and optimistic when I meet these dogs that given the right environment and a lot of patience and a lot of love, that any dog is capable of making small steps and hopefully, being rehabilitated and having a good quality of life.
I would give a shout out to the National Mill Dog Rescue. Maybe you've heard of it near Colorado Springs. They rescue the breeding dogs and they rehabilitate them. They bathe them. They give them veterinary care, dental care, and they have volunteers work with them to do behavior. So anyway, if anybody's interested in a puppy mill survivor, National Mill Dog Rescue, NMDR, I think it's Peyton, Colorado, in Peyton, Colorado. Good place to reach out to.
That's a great point, because typically the only dogs who make it out of these situations are the puppies, because they're highly desired, and often these parent dogs, unless they're seized through some sort of legal action, they don't get to see the light of day. And when you have an organization like National Mill Dog Rescue that's specifically looking out for those dogs, they're the ones that are going to, give them a second chance at life and that second lease on life. So that's wonderful.
This is a tough conversation. It's making me really imagine, envision, see in my mind's eye what's going on in these puppy mills. Another word you might want to use for them is factories, because that's really what they are. And it just is reminding me of a lecture that I attended a few weeks ago at Denver University, where the philosopher Martha Nussbaum was talking about this kind of thing, not for dogs necessarily, all animals, frankly. And she was just talking about the factory farms and describing the conditions of the hogs and the metal encasements they were kept in for their entire lives, which weren't very long, but they were long enough to impart quite a bit of suffering on these animals. And I'm just wondering when at the national level we're going to do something about this. It's just
and that's part of why we are having this difficult conversation, Mark, is, we all love our dogs. And what I would say to people who tell me they love dogs is say it's not enough to love your dog. You have to look at your community and the culture, and we're all culpable if we walk right past. I mentioned a pet store that I have to drive past every time I take my son to soccer. And Cheryl, you said you must live near us, because we see it, but most people don't see it. They don't see that sign at the bus stop that says puppies for sale is a problem. They don't see that advertising at the local grocery store on the cart as a big problem. And once your eyes are open to it, not only do you see it, but you need to do something about it. Here in Colorado, there's a group called Colorado Voters for Animals, and they do Learn to Caucus Days where you can go and learn how to lobby, and it's actually very interesting and fun. So if it feels intimidating, if somebody says, what are you going to do about it? Go to 3CW, learn about these activism groups. And if you're not in Colorado, just start looking around, because I know a lot of this stuff starts at the local level. Pam and Cheryl, you mentioned to me before when we were talking about legislation that a lot of times these start at grassroots local levels, and there were groups that were moving and doing things in the right direction, and it kind of snowballs towards working towards state legislation. Is there anything like that you want to talk to or that you're aware of?
Well, as I mentioned, there are groups in Colorado that have, and we have assisted, that have achieved the banning of the sale of puppies in pet stores in 15 cities in Colorado. And currently, people are working on Fort Collins and Windsor and Commerce City. And also there are 2 national bills, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the names of them, but they partner with each other. And I don't know, Pam, do you recall what the names of those bills are? There are 2. There's no law to ban puppy mills in the United States, but the bills improve the lives of the dogs living in puppy mills. Like they say that they have to have time to get out of their cages once a day and minimum amounts of veterinary care and grooming. It'll improve what governs the dogs nationally, the commercial breeding facilities nationally. You had mentioned this, Drew, is the Animal Welfare Act, and it was created in the 1960s. And it says that a dog can live in a cage that is 6 inches larger than itself in each dimension. That's the minimum right now of the federal inspection of puppy mills. So these 2 new laws are going to improve that, but the commercial breeding facilities will still be legal.
Yes. One of the ones you're trying to think of is Goldie's Act.
Yeah.
One of them improves the conditions, and Goldie's Act says the USDA must enforce the standards. Right now, the USDA issues violations, then they move on because they don't have enough inspectors to stay up on it. So Goldie's Act says they will find a way to enforce whatever the standards are, and the first one is to improve the standards.
Pam, was that named after that golden retriever? I feel like the story of that was an inspector kept going to a breeder or something who kept like 500 dogs, and they could visibly see the ribs on this golden retriever. And in the time it took them to do anything, we're talking months of just watching this dog literally starving to death. Wasn't that Goldie that inspired that?
Yes, it was. And you are right. The dog, Goldie, did starve to death.
That's awful.
It's terrible.
So, I don't see this as a compassion issue in a sense. I think with 85 to 90% of people considering their dogs to be members of the family, I mean, we as a society here in this country and in North America in general, at least in Canada, we're obsessed with our dogs. But what I do see this as, which I think is what you're getting at with your organization, frankly, is an awareness issue. So as Drew was saying earlier, people see the ads at the bus stop, the cute ads at the bus stop and wherever else they see these beautiful, beautiful, cute little dogs. Ooh, ah, little do they realize the suffering behind the scenes. So it really is an awareness issue. And I think once we make people aware on a much grander scale, on a much broader scale, they'll become activated and they'll take action. I mean, compassion ultimately is action. So Drew, we're going to do what we can to spread the word nationally. This is a national podcast. We have a national website, and we're going to do what we can because I think once people get it, they'll stop. And it's not like going into a pet store is a bargain, right? So why do it?
Well, Mark, you're right on. And really what we're talking about is humane education. And for some of us, it feels overwhelming. Like this conversation feels difficult. It feels hard. But for me as a father of young children, I feel like I have a duty that those kids see that they are aware of that. Because a lot of the times when people are buying these animals from pet stores, it's families that they just don't even know where to start. When the kids are asking for the dog, they're saying, where do we go? And that's why you need to know who your local shelters are. You need to know if they're, a good place to go and meet animals. You need to see that there's options out there, and don't just, oh, we saw the cute dog and haha, impulse buy, haha. Well, I mean, this is a lifelong decision. People put more education and time into buying a car they might own for 5 or 6 years. You're talking about a decision that's going to impact your life and your family and clearly the life of that dog. So even if you think I'm doing something good by purchasing that puppy to get that puppy out of that situation, you're feeding that animal, you're feeding that system that's creating those puppies. So Mark, you're right on. Like, we have to wake up and we have to create calls to action. So Pam and Cheryl, what can our listeners do? Obviously we know there's these tools in Colorado, but what if they're not in Colorado? Like, where should they start looking for action and things that they can start doing? What's the very least, the first step or a group they can donate to that you would recommend?
Well, there's always the Humane Society of the United States. They have a whole puppy mill project. Best Friends. What's the other one, Pam? I can't think right now.
Bailing Out Benji is a USA-wide organization.
Yeah,
they
that's
are a
great.
wonderful organization at opening people's eyes and helping advertise the issues. But there are lots of them. I'm going to say, Drew, it's easy to find organizations for activism. But if it's mother and father at home saying, we need to get a puppy for our daughter, and they're just sitting there, they don't know what to do. So what we need to do is advertise more where they can get puppies. And it's a dichotomy. It's twofold. You can get them in rescues and shelters, or let us tell you how to find a breeder, because that's the part that people don't know. So we
Tell
do
us,
have
Pam,
that.
about your website. I know you've got that Find a Dog tab on the website.
Right. And under that, we do list a bunch of rescues and shelters here in Colorado, but we also have a section on how do you find a responsible breeder.
Great.
But I'll just say for this podcast, so somebody doesn't have to go read it. The way you do it is you have a dog in mind that you want, or maybe several. I want a poodle or a Bichon or a Maltese. You go find on the web the National Parent Club website. And on that website, there will be a list of breeders by state on most of the websites. If not, they will have a breed referral person. Hey, I live in Colorado. Who do you have that breeds and sells poodles here in Colorado? And they'll be able to give you the names. That's your starting point. And then with that other paper that Mark referenced earlier, Breeding for Health, you go check that breeder out and make sure that they had those health tests done. Check on that website. Ask for the parents' AKC registration numbers. You should be interested in their pedigree, and they will give you those numbers. So that's how you get started.
I think now would be a good time to break away for a moment and just mention to our listeners that there are a number of ways, important ways, that they can support us. You can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is LoveDogNews. You can go over to Ko-fi, ko-fi/LoveDog, and buy us a cup of coffee. The minimum donation there is $4, about the cost of a good cup of coffee. You can follow us on your favorite podcast app. And, good old-fashioned word of mouth always makes a big difference. Tell a friend, tell a family member. If you think what we're talking about might pertain to them, they might enjoy it and find it helpful, that would be so great. And just a quick announcement that Drew is going to be launching a Tuesday series on Instagram with training tips. Drew's one of the best out there. He's very well known, and you will learn a lot from him at LoveDogNews on Instagram. So go have a look. We'll get back to the show now, and thank you. I think, Drew, this is a good place to talk about fostering, because I think it was Pam that said the parent wants to go out and get a dog for the child. What the parent is also thinking is, yeah, I want to go out and get a great little pup, cute little thing for my child or my children, and I don't want to have to return the pup. I want the pup to succeed. I want the family to succeed with the pup. And we've talked about, and I know Cheryl and Pam are big proponents of fostering. So, and when there are these foster-based shelters that only foster, don't have actual facilities. And then there, of course, are ones that do have facilities, but also have a whole foster network that works with them. So let's just talk about fostering and how that can help the family succeed with the new pup.
Well, if you go through shelter or a rescue, it's very common with the rescues that they use fostering. A dog that has been fostered is the fostering process is that a person volunteers to have that dog for a week or a month or however long it takes for it to get adopted. But then that foster person can answer your questions. Is the doghouse broken? Is it good with children? Is it good with cats? That kind of thing. And they've worked with the dog, so they've given it a warm, loving environment to be in. They've started training. So if you get a dog from a foster, you're going to get a dog with a lot of knowledge that you're not going to get from a dog that you get from a pet store, from one online. So fostering is really, and also you could foster to adopt. So people, one of my relatives she says, I'm a foster failure because she fostered a dog and then she adopted it. So she called herself a foster failure. So there's always that option. So I fostered 4 dogs. And then one time I fostered a mother dog and her 10 puppies. And it was just an amazing experience. And I recommend everybody should foster 2 puppies, not 10, but 2. It's to watch them grow and develop is just incredible and heartwarming. But then it was through the Denver Animal Shelter. They provided all the food, all the things I needed. I didn't have to pay for, they provided everything. And they found homes for all the puppies. And I actually found a home for the mother. So it all worked out great.
Well, that's such a great point, Cheryl. That's something that communities can do. And if you're sitting here listening to this episode and you're like, what can I do? I'm not going to, I don't want to learn to legislate. I don't want to learn this. Go and become a foster. They are so badly needed in every state and across the U.S. We need fosters. And it's a great way to help your local organization. If you say don't have the time to go in and volunteer at the shelter every day or every couple of days, you just have them right there in your home, and then you got to bring them to the adoption event or somebody picks them up for you. So it's a wonderful thing you can do. Let's talk a little bit about some common fears people hold around getting dogs from shelters and fosters. I hear this a lot from families where I meet them and they've already got the dog from the pet store and they say, well, they wanted to get a dog from either a breeder or a pet store because they believe it'll be a blank slate versus that fear that a dog from a shelter or a foster might be somehow, quote, damaged, or, they may have gone through an experience that they're worried about. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as we mentioned, adopting a puppy that's lived in a puppy mill for its first 6 to 8 weeks of life, it hasn't had the socialization. So it's not a blank slate. If you can imagine, it's born in this commercial breeding facility to a mother who is not socialized. And then it's not like it magically appears in the pet store. It has to get transported. So it goes from a cage in the puppy mill to a cage in a van. It's transported across the country to another cage in a pet store. And at this point, it's been exposed to a lot of contagious illnesses in the puppy mill. It hasn't had socialization, so it very likely could come down with an illness. Its immune system is shot from being immature and undergoing all that. So I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was.
No, you're great. And, I think this is exactly the answer we're looking for, is that it's not a blank slate, because not only has that dog not experience the things we would put on, our behavioral health checklist for like versus a dog living in a foster home that's getting interacted with, that's having those early experiences, that's building that socialization repertoire. But now we're learning so much about epigenetics and what kinds of traits are being inherited from the mother and father dogs, and those could be really undesirable things. So even though they might look cute in the pet store, you might be getting a project dog for life. I can tell you those are the dogs that I see all the time on my behavioral list, and they think, oh man, we got sold a lemon, like this dog can't do the thing, because they have this idea of the perfect family dog, and now they have this fearful dog who doesn't do the things that they'd hoped that would enrich their lives together.
I have 3 things to add here, believe it or not. 2 are actually plugs for lovedog.com. Obviously, they're relevant, and 1 is a question. The first thing is, Cheryl, you were talking about the journey. They're born, and then they may be put on a bus or in the back of a van or in a plane if they're lucky, but probably not. And then they end up in a shelter somewhere 1,000, 2,000 miles away. They start in Puerto Rico, they end up in Seattle. It's a long, torturous, in many cases, uncomfortable journey. And Drew, Steve Dunno, the author that we both know, wrote an article for us on lovedog.com that we call Their Incredible Journey. And I published that article because I felt like the more someone understands what the dog has gone through, the more perhaps empathic they might be as they try to set that dog up for success. Maybe they'll be a little bit more patient with the dog. Maybe they'll invest a little bit more in the training if they understand that the dog has frankly suffered on this trip, not to mention the conditions that it was born into and spent the first 6 weeks. So I'm going to put that up on the show notes. I'm going to put a link to that story in the show notes. We also on lovedog.com do an adoption section, and every week I try to put up 6 new dogs for adoption around the country. And one of the things that I've learned as I edit these listings from the shelters around the country is that if a dog is being fostered, the shelter will often in their listing include an entire section of comments from the foster. So people can go onto to a shelter website, find a dog that they like. If the dog is being fostered, it may not have a separate section in the listing about the foster's comments, but it very well may. And the foster goes into great detail about what it's like to have this dog in the house, in the home. And so those are the 2 comments I want to make. And the question I have is, it happens where a litter is separated, and in some cases, a brother and a sister or 2 brothers and 2 sisters will go to the same foster or go to the same shelter and be in the same cage together. I have heard that an adopter should not adopt siblings. It's not good for them. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, it can be really hard. I meet people all the time that bring more than 1 dog home, and I go, oh, you poor people, you're in for it. I think one of the hardest things is when you're talking about those early learning stages, those dogs have been bonding since the day they were born. And often what you find is they have this really strong bond, and you're sort of that third wheel. Or you can also have more conflicts, kind of like a sibling rivalry. So there was something a long time ago called preferred puppy playmate or something, where they studied litters, and they tend to see certain dogs will play and interact with certain dogs from the litters. And you also tend to see more conflicts between certain dogs and litters. So you don't exactly know which dogs are there, but that kind of comes from that human guilt of, I can't leave that one behind and just take this one. And so I would recommend, if somebody's feeling that maybe they find, I have met lots of clients who then will get that puppy into a different home, and ideally maybe somebody in their family, and then they raise these dogs as like siblings but in different households, and they're a little
like
more
they'll be like cousins.
Yeah. It's crazy. My dog Ozzy, who just came by, he's 11. I started a Facebook group when we moved from Seattle to Colorado just because I wanted to know what would happen with the puppies. And one of the people who had taken another puppy moved to Colorado, and we had a meetup, and they instantly recognized each other, even though they hadn't seen each other for 10 months. And it was insane, rough, rowdy boy play like I had never seen my dog play with another dog. And I was like, okay, so they still know that early stage of development is powerful and it imprints on them. So yeah, I think the smart thing to do is take one puppy, commit to that puppy, and if you end up with two, just know you've got twice the work to do, and those puppies are going to be tremendously bonded to each other. Hey there, just one last quick little break before we wrap up our conversation today. I just want to remind you that this episode was brought to you by Jope's Hip and Joint Dog Chews. They chose UC2 for its superior efficacy compared to glucosamine. They added higher dose EPA and DHA omega-3 than leading brands and included 95% concentrated curcumin from turmeric. Jope's Hip and Joint Dog Chews have been a game changer for my own dog, and I recommend them to all of my clients. Go to petjope.com, petjope.com, and enter promo code LOVEDOG at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Now, back to the show.
Do you want to ask our friend Kate's question?
Yeah, so a friend of the show, Kate LaSala, is a dog behavior professional, and she had a question for you all. She was talking about the Humane Society of the United States was proactive and, as she says, somewhat successful in working with communities to encourage townships to pass local ordinances banning the sale of dogs bred in puppy mills. And so we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but you'll often hear behavior professionals like Kate, myself, Drew, going to these municipalities and speaking up about animal welfare issues. So we're curious to know, what other similar movements have there been in Colorado and in other states where you see these local municipalities kind of snowballing, and or is there a state we should all be looking at as sort of the example? So if your state isn't doing what they should, where they can say, well, let's look at how they did it over here. Like, is there a precedent we can kind of set?
Well, Colorado is actually one of the leaders, believe it or not. We have an organization through the Colorado Department of Agriculture called PACFA, which is the Pet Animal Care Facilities Act. And they are charged with inspecting all the pet animal care facilities in Colorado, and that includes the dog breeding facilities. It includes like dog groomers and reptiles and all sorts of other things. And unfortunately, they only have like 5 inspectors for probably thousands of facilities to inspect. But the laws in Colorado that regulate the commercial breeding facilities are better than the Animal Welfare Act that governs the entire country. And for one thing that happened since Pam and I got involved in all of this, I mean, it seems like such a no-brainer, and it took a really long, hard fight, but they ruled that new commercial breeding facilities could not have wire bottom cages.
Oh, good.
That the bottoms had to be more humane for the animals to live on, because the pads of their feet were falling through the wire bottoms and they were getting damaged. And you would see pictures of puppies and dogs standing in the water bowls because that was the only solid surface. So anyway, Colorado, we have PACFA. So commercial breeding facilities in Colorado get inspected by the federally and by the Colorado people. I think we're one of the better states, and it's still very minimal here. What do you think, Pam?
Yes, I do think we're one of the better states, but what we must do is increase the requirements that the USDA starts with. Our requirements are a little better, but they're still puppies, many of them in large facilities without adequate human socialization. So we have lots of work to do also.
Well, especially if we look at animal welfare as an attempt to help animals cope with the environment and I think of how subjective, when we talk about these inspectors, be it PACFA or USDA, we got to remember that welfare is so subjective, right? It's based on the observer and that day and time that they happen to go and if they're allowed access. I remember working in shelters, and you don't have a choice when PACFA shows up. You got to show them in, and for better or worse, they get to see everything, which is good. And kind of going back to that, us as a canine industry, as a pet loving industry, we have this multi-billion-dollar industry based on profiting off of dogs. Why are we not allocating more money into groups like this that are going to be pushing for changes and pushing for higher standards, not just those 6-inch, clearance in the cages and things like that? We have to become aware as a culture, and we really need to put pressure on our lawmakers. And if there's big groups and businesses out there that can have some pull, I think it's time that people step up and they start putting some of that money into welfare and not just turning profits for themselves.
I agree.
Okay. One of the things that I want us to cover is, are there any specific health issues that stand out that are most common in dogs from puppy mills? Are there allergies, skin issues, any other kinds of issues that are most common?
The puppies very often might get adopted and then a few days later come down with parvovirus, other contagious illnesses that they can get in the puppy mill. And then later on, they can show congenital, like hip problems. Pam could probably speak to this better. Eye problems, genetic things that don't show up for 6 to 12 months or later, because they weren't bred for health. They were just bred for profit. They were bred to be as cute as possible and not as healthy as possible.
Well, they were bred, I would also say, not necessarily as cute as possible. They were simply bred to breed specific dogs, say a Bichon Frise. Hey, I have a female, I have a male, breed them. That's all that's needed. I have AKC registration numbers, no health history, breed them. I had a dog that I got that developed progressive retinal atrophy, which meant her retina atrophied, and by the time she was 8 years old, she was showing signs of blindness. By the time she was 9.5, she was blind. Well, that's not covered by anybody's guarantee. It doesn't show up till later. That's the kind of stuff that you don't discover when you simply breed 2 dogs of the same breed. That is the kind of thing you discover when you have a reputable breeder who takes great pains to do all the health recommended tests, who calls all of the puppy buyers throughout the life of the puppies that have been sold and said, what has turned up in your dog? And keeps records and makes careful, conscious decisions about which dogs get mated together.
Yeah, it's hard, and I think I saw some statistics that were showing the reported salaries for breeders, and for those that were probably falling under this reputable breeders are reporting between $30,000 to the high being $46,000 a year, which means it's not really an easy game to profit at, because if you've ever taken one dog to the vet, you know what that kind of expense can be. Now imagine taking 8 puppies and what that vet bill might look like. And so when you're talking about reputable breeders, it's very difficult to turn a profit. You should be breeding to continue the health and behavioral health of that breed line. If that's something you're passionate about, you're probably not going to come out much out of the red. And so when you see these people who are being cited for 500 to 600 dogs, that's how they're doing it. They're turning the most number of dogs out. And some of these places that have been cited, they're reporting $4.2 million and things like that. And that's how you know that money is coming out of the daily welfare of those animals. That's the only way to do it, is to sacrifice the animals' well-being for those, them lining their pockets. And it's atrocious, and it's time as a community we stand up and we do something.
Is there anything that we haven't covered in today's interview that you think is important, that you want that message to get out there? This is an advocacy kind of thing. It's an education kind of thing. And there just may be some things on your mind that you want to say as we start to wrap this up.
Well, I have one thing that we didn't touch on much. you'll see ads in the newspaper. The Denver Post every day runs ads, color ads in the pet wanted section of puppies for sale, and they all say AKC certified. That alone does not mean it's a reputable breeder or a dog bred for health. It means that they paid a fee to AKC, which makes money from that, and that's all it takes. So what Pam has been talking about, going to the Chick website, doing your homework, but don't be fooled by AKC certified dog. It doesn't mean anything other than they paid a fee to AKC.
And you're saying CHIC, Chick, and that was that canine health info database started by Eddie Zwick. Is that right?
Correct.
But the AKC doesn't have a standard that has to be met?
I don't believe so.
Really?
The AKC itself has parent clubs that belong to it. Each parent club develops their confirmation standards and a list of the health issues. But they are not required at all, any breeder, to adhere to any standard. You can breed any two dogs, and that's what puppy mills do. They breed two dogs that have AKC registration numbers, regardless of whether they meet the standards or had the health tests.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What, just out of curiosity, I mean, Colorado, you're saying is one of the states that's quite progressive, and they have a long way to go. Are there other states, one or two other states, that stand out for the things that they're doing or the tools that they have available to people other than Colorado that you're aware of?
I don't know of any other state besides Colorado.
I don't either.
And I would say PACFA is good to have, but quite progressive. This is about living standards. They are not about standards for breeding, keeping track of health or conformation. Mm-hmm. So this is just about living standards that are slightly better than USDA standards.
Mm-hmm.
They have rules on what detergent you could use to clean the cage and things like that. That's what PACFA does.
Well, let me just read from another question that Kate had, where she says, in New Jersey, the Humane Society of the U.S., HSUS, was proactive and fairly successful in working with communities to encourage townships to pass local ordinances banning the sales of dogs bred in puppy mills, essentially putting pet stores out of business town by town. So I guess we shouldn't expect you to know all of this. You're concerned with what goes on here in Colorado, but it does sound like there are other states that are proactive and having some success. But as I said before, and this is where I think that Goldie's Law or Goldie's Act came up, it's going to have to happen on a national level at some point, some way. And that's just good old-fashioned marketing and education and awareness building. And over time, it'll begin to sink in. Because I think, and I said it before and I'll just say it again, there is a reservoir. I mean, we're talking about a colossal reservoir of goodwill here in society, here among the population of people who do not want dogs to suffer. And if they just were made more aware, if there was just some more messaging out there to counter the...
Really, it's going to take a lot of messaging, because I know a lot of people who know a lot about puppy mills, and they fall to the impulse to buy that cute puppy in the pet store. Do not go into the pet store, because you can't... I know good people that have adopted from pet stores full knowing that the dog came from a puppy mill. So don't go in, because the pull is too hard to resist.
Well, I want to just say thank you both for coming on. It's really an honor, and it's a different kind of show. It's perhaps one of the most important, because we all want this to stop. Thank you for coming and talking to us. And we're just going to talk about and think about and innovate, I guess is a good word, ways that we can support you and the effort overall. As a media company here, it's a great cause. Thank you.
Well, and just to the listeners, never buy a puppy from a pet store or online. If you buy it online, you must do your homework and make sure it's not a puppy mill.
Yeah. Now you've got some great tools, and we'll put all those resources in the show notes so you can go armed and be annoying and be ready. Ask as many questions as possible. Get up their bums with your questions. Don't just look at the photos. Don't be duped. You're smarter than that. You're better than that, and these puppies deserve it. Thank you both for your work, your tireless work. It's important work, completely invaluable. We need more people like you, and I thank you for your time and your effort in coming on the show today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the chance to talk to your listeners about puppy mills. Thank you.
Hey there, it's Mark, and I just want to thank all our listeners for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the show today and that you're continuing to find the podcast valuable and helpful with each new episode. If you have any suggestions for us, please feel free to email us at podcast@lovedog.com. If there's one major takeaway from today's show with Cheryl and Pam on puppy mills, I'd say it's this. Puppy mills are bad. Don't support them. Now, if you're getting a dog from a well-recognized, reputable shelter, you go in not knowing where the dog you adopt comes from, or you may not necessarily ever find that out. And even if you do find out that it comes from a puppy mill, that's okay, because you're not paying a premium price for it, and that dog needs a home, and you're not directly supporting puppy mills. On the other hand, if you go to a pet store, or if you knowingly go to a puppy mill and you purchase the dog, you're paying a premium at a pet store, you're going to pay a premium with the breeder, so-called breeder. You're supporting the whole trade. It's not a good thing because the dogs aren't treated well. So the takeaway is, don't buy your dog from a pet store, don't buy your dog from a puppy mill directly, don't support puppy mills, because the puppy mills are not good for the dogs. It's really that simple. If you want to support the podcast, you can do it in a number of different ways. You can tell someone you know that you find it helpful and enjoyable, and they might as well, so tell them about us. You can follow us or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can buy us a cup of coffee on Ko-fi, that's ko-fi.com/lovedog. Minimum donation $4, about the cost of a cup of coffee. And please follow us on Instagram. Our handle is @lovedognews. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. And until next time, happy howling.